Candy, I'm so excited to have you on the show. I just read your formal bio, which is absolutely incredible. And I can just sit here and edify you for 45 minutes, but I want to make sure that we actually give value to the audience members. So just a big warm welcome. I'm super grateful to have you here.
Well, thanks so much for having me. And that big, long bio just basically means I'm old. I've done a lot of things. I often think I'm like, can we change that so that people don't really expect much when I come to the table? Like it might be a little easier.
I don't know about that. Definitely don't think you're old. And you started young, which is something
Yeah.
just so incredible about you and about everything that you have done. Because I think back to when I was 19, to when I was 21, to when I was 26. And I certainly was not buying real estate. I was not thinking about building a business. I'm pretty sure I was either down the Jersey Shore fist pumping or at a nightclub in New York City until the sun came up. So,
well, you were the girls that I was like, did I make the right decision? Should I be in the club right now? So I totally get it.
I love it. But there's so many things I want to talk about today. Of course, I want to dive into Wealth Habits, which is one of my favorite books of the end of 2022. I've already read it. I've flagged so many different pages in the book. So I want to chat about that. But first and foremost, I just have to say it because I've said it on the podcast before. Ladies and gents, Candy is the shark that I have talked about when I did the Shark Tank pitch a couple of years ago at Chris's mastermind. And Candy was one of the sharks who came into the room in this boss suit. And I had no idea who she was. And she's adorable and beautiful. And if you haven't been over to our YouTube, come check it out. You can see for yourself. But I was so nervous to pitch to you because I didn't know who you were. And I had no idea what I was pitching because I was pitching at the time a crazy, stupid idea, not something that actually was, had anything to do with my business. So just to sort of put a bow on everything and connect all the dots, ladies and gents, Candy Valentino was the shark at the Shark Tank pitch that I was able to do. And what you might not know is that your silly little competition that we did, the belief that you had in my crazy, stupid idea, and the sheer fact that you and the other judges voted for my idea just breathed so much confidence and life back into my business at the time of I was going through a really hard time living in the RV and having an identity crisis and sort of just not knowing if I wanted to be in the coaching industry anymore. And so that little moment, which happened to actually be on my birthday, was such a big moment for me. And then of course, running into you a month and a half later in the hotel in Vegas, I was like, okay, universe, I see you.
Crazy. Yeah. And I remember that pitch. You did an amazing job. Like, you know me a little bit more now that like, I'm not smoke and fluff. Like I would never crush someone's dream or put someone down, but I'm also real with it.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we might need to tweak this or really isn't going to happen. But you crushed that. Like, and so that was all genuine. All of that positive feedback I gave. It was a great idea and still something that maybe might surface it someday.
I know. I'm like, it still doesn't exist 3 years later, which is crazy. All right. So let's get into it. We're chatting all things wealth. Now, you're a woman who has actually created wealth. And I love that about you, but I love how you speak about it because you make it tangible. You take a difficult concept that for a lot of people is hard to understand. You make it easy to understand. You're a natural born teacher. When you hear the term wealth, can you just give us a definition of wealth? What is that to you?
So the true definition when we're speaking about money is just basically your actual net worth, right? How much you own in assets compared to what you owe in liabilities. That's really what wealth is. I believe it's way more than that. I think that a lot of times people go after the balance sheet and creating a net worth, and they try to build wealth or acquire money, and they actually miss the whole point of building a rich life. And so I think it's the accumulation of a lot of things. I think wealth gives you the ability to do what you want, when you want, with whoever you want, to contribute what you want, to bless who you want. And so for me, it's much more about that than it is the money, but that's easy from the chair I'm sitting in to say that now. What I like to do is make sure that the people listening that haven't done it yet, that are even just confused on the topic or what that even means, to be able to boil it down, regardless of the family that you grew up in or the circumstances of your life right now. Like, wealth is here for you too. That's the most important part I want you to take from anything you hear me on or this specific podcast. Is I grew up in a trailer on government assistance to 2 teenage parents. I'm not a result of some great fortune in life or intelligence or connections. It was really about doing very ordinary things, playing the long game over time. And what it does is it shows that if anyone is willing to do the work, you too can build wealth.
The thing that you said, 2 things here that I loved. One, you said rich life, which is very different than wealth. So when we take into account the definition of wealth and what that really is, I think there's a lot of confusion on the internet. I know there is because I see it. And so we have lots of people, coaches talking about wealth and building wealth and courses on wealth when that's not actually what they're talking about. A lot of times it's like money mindset.
Yeah.
And then you also talked about this idea of having a rich life, which really could be anything. I mean, if a rich life to you is hanging out with your friends and family on Sunday nights and having traditional, dinners with them, that's a rich life. If it's going to the gym 5 days a week and making sure you're hitting your goals, that's a rich life. So has your definition of rich life changed over the years?
Oh yeah, for sure. Because when I was in my 20s building my first business, like I didn't have anything. So
Yeah.
to me, it was like I had a lot of leverage to be successful because my reality of what the world existed for me was so small. And, being a female in business in 1999 was a much different world than it is now in 2023.
Yeah.
So, there it was you're a teacher or a nurse, and the idea of being a business in a predominantly male field was absurd. And like, who do you think you are? Right.
Sure.
And there were women on the side of the fence that were also like, who do you think you are? And so I think it's changed a lot because of understanding that there was so many times in my life, coming from an abusive childhood, coming from the situation that I had to kind of climb out of, there was so much that I was running from, that I was trying to find wealth and build wealth and have success, to almost prove that I was worthy of showing up in such a big way, that I was worthy of living this life. And I was doing so much to prove and running from so much that I forgot at some point, I get to choose what I want to run towards.
Ooh, I just got chills.
Right. And I mean, sometimes in life, we forget that we're just always running because that's what our nervous system is wired to do, because maybe we haven't fully healed. But you get to choose what you want to run towards. And my definition of wealth is so different than yours or anyone listening, because it's, what do you want your life to look like? I think the most important part for people to understand is, if you don't develop the concept and the understanding, you will eventually trade time for money for the rest of your life. And so it's just about understanding, if you do love going to the gym 5 days a week and you only want to work, 10 hours a week, that's okay. But if you haven't done the work first, you may be doing that for the rest of your life and trying to retire on Social Security benefits. I just want to give the information so people understand it, but then they also know that it's not the information that's going to change their life. Right. It's the implementation and execution of it that will. So that's where I think we need to elevate the conversation about money and about business, and talk about, this concept, think and get rich, is only going to get you so far. Like you have to do to build wealth. You have to do to have a rich life. And that's what I feel like I kind of come in and just share that gap for people.
And that is hands down my favorite thing about you, because in that sense, we have a very similar take on sort of the doing and the masculine energy. And I'm all about the dreaming and the manifesting and the being, but it requires action. Like you said, it's implementation. If the information was the only thing we'd need, we'd all be rich, because the information is everywhere, right?
Amen. It's free.
It's free. It's literally, we have like infobesity.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great word.
Really too. Like consumptionitis. Yeah. We're just like, it's just all we do is we consume, and we paralyze ourselves in the lack of taking action. We can procrastinate with that mask of, I'm just learning. Well,
and then we feel successful because we're learning. We get the dopamine hit of feeling successful, but then your life doesn't change. Yeah. So the question to ask yourself is, one, have you ever decided what you're running towards in your life, and what do you want your life to look like? And really define that, visualize, and on all of the things, attract. I believe in all of those things, but it's only a part. It's like part of the puzzle. It's not the whole picture. And then decide, what do I need to develop? What financial acumen or business acumen or personal finance do I need to develop in order to know what to do? Because there's nothing flashy. There's nothing special. There's no magic bullet to success or wealth. So sorry to anyone listening who was looking for one. I just blew up your world. But no, I mean, it's really simple things, but that's what makes it so great, because it's available to anyone. Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Okay. So, and I just love this idea too. I got this visual. I'm such a visual person. When you said puzzle, the manifesting, the visualizing is literally looking at the cover. When we look at the box of a puzzle to like see what it is, and then you have to put the pieces down.
Right. And if you just look at the picture, like it's going to stay
not
in the
happen.
box.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? We got to take it out of the box. We got to get into the mess. That's what a lot I cover in the first part of the book, is the mess of wealth, because a lot of everything that anyone listening right now that you think about money, like even just me showing up, like you just said a bunch of nice things about me in the beginning, and here I am, and we're talking about wealth. Some people are going to initially have a gut reaction, whether it's it's lack, it could be jealousy, it could be anything, right? We all carry around these judgy feelings, but I just want you to remember that everything you think right now about anyone with money, about how money is earned, all of that has either been caught or taught by someone else in your life. Like if you haven't done the work to really figure out what you think about money and what money means to you and your family and your future, you're just taking old patterns that your parents or family or society has given you, and you're bringing them into your life. I think it's time to empower ourselves to redefine that and recalibrate it to what we want our lives to look like.
Oh, it's so good. There's the soundbite for you. All right. So let's talk for a second about ways to earn multiple streams of income, because that's a conversation that we have all the time. We definitely do on this podcast. We do in our coaching programs, and everybody would love to earn multiple streams of income. Something that I see in the coaching industry a lot is this fantasy about passive income. Mm-hmm. So in the lens of education, digital education, people think I can create a course, I could put it on a website, and it will be passive. And we both know that's not true, because you need traffic to the website, you need to market it, you still need to talk about the product. So it's not fully passive. But when you talk about different multiple streams of income, you do talk about earned income, passive income, and portfolio income. So can you break that down for us? What's the difference between them?
So earned income is exactly what you're talking about. A coach that has an online business, even though you have a course, that course is inside of a business, and that business requires you to show up for it, to manage your team, to make sure your funnel's working right, to make sure your website copy is updated. All of that is you actively participating in a business. So that's earned income. It could also be W-2 or 1099 from your clients, right? That's all earned income. You are going to pay the highest amount of tax on earned income than any other type of income that exists. It's the way the IRS has set it up. So if you're whatever, $1 million that you net or $100,000, you're pretty much going to be walking away with, even if that's your net, half of that. Right? It could be 40%, it could be whatever, but you got to figure out that that's half. When you get into passive and portfolio income, you're reducing your tax basis down to maybe 20%, maybe 15%, depending on the situation. The only way that you can do that, flip the entire script of everything you've been taught about how to make money. And that is not working to earn money and then earning money to spend money.
Can we pause for 1 second?
Sure.
Okay. Working to earn money. You said something. So I've been to all of your events that you've done in person, and you said something at this last event that you hosted. And it was this idea. And again, I'm visual. So it was something about the entrepreneur who creates a cage that they then live inside. And we forget that we have the key. And I have been in that situation so many times where I'm working to earn money, and even working to earn money to pay my team. Sure. And I'll sit there going, what am I doing? It's like I replaced my job with a job. Yes, I'm my own boss, but I'm the one who has the key. So do I need to make a change? So is working to earn money a bad thing, or is it just an ongoing thing that you can't get away from it until you bring in something more passive or portfolio?
So it's never a bad thing, because it might just be what you actually need to do. Personal finance, like business, is super easy. You either make more or spend less. So if you're in the position where you're not making enough, or enough that you want to be making, you may very well need to be earning money. But it's the difference is what you do with it. It's taking earned money and investing it into passive or portfolio income. So if we go back to the beginning of it, you're earning money, you're trading. Typically, the only way you earn money is by trading time for money.
Right.
That's it. And even in your business, in that scenario that you just gave, you're still trading your time for money. You're growing the business, you're fixing the funnels, you're doing that, you're managing the team, you're making payroll. So that's your time. When you can take that money and you bring that money in, and instead of spending it, so the traditional model is you earn it, pay taxes, then you spend it. That's what everyone's taught. Get a great job, go to college, and this is what you do. If we flip the script and we instead earn money through a business, which then we actually get the money and pay taxes later, then on our dividends, or what we net, we then take and invest into passive or portfolio income. Then all the money that comes off of those dividends or from that passive income is taxed at a lower tax basis. And then you spend that money. So you may have to pause and play that back, because it's totally different than what you've heard, but I'll simplify it. Instead of taking earned money and spending it, you take earned money and invest it, and then you spend the dividends off of those investments. So the goal is creating assets, and a business can be an asset 100%. Like I've built companies and sold them. That's an asset. But if you build a business that you cannot exit, You did not build an asset.
Yes.
You built a job.
A job. Yep.
And that's what's the difference, is a lot of people are glamorizing entrepreneurship, but they're leaving people with the missing pieces as far as like they're leaving them flat. It's kind of like getting somebody all excited about something that's coming up, but then not actually telling them how to attend the great party, right? Yeah. Entrepreneurship is only great if you work it well. And you either have to take the money from that business and build assets on the side, if it's just going to be something that you like to be self-employed. Because let's be real, if you want to just do what you do and you don't like managing people and you don't want to grow a team, you can still be self-employed forever. My dad was my whole life, but you have to take that money and buy other assets or you'll be working for the rest of your life.
Oh, it's so good. There's a difference between coaches and entrepreneurs. And I don't think a lot of coaches even understand this. And this is a conversation we're having so much now in the last 2 years, where there's nothing wrong with someone who just wants to coach, who doesn't want to deal with taxes and team and overhead and funnels and email marketing. And that's really intrapreneurship. We have tons of coaches in our business who come in and coach for and with us, and then they leave and they don't have to do sales and marketing and all the things. And that's really beautiful because they could stay in that zone of genius of coaching. It's when we cross that line of really becoming an entrepreneur where you are saying yes to things like the taxes and IRS stuff, right? And you're saying yes to team and management. When I look at my day-to-day now versus 5 years ago, I'm not coaching that much. I'm leading and managing my team. I'm making decisions for the business. I'm driving the ship as the visionary. It's very different. And you get to play in the area of, do I actually like this? Let me try it on for size. Maybe I don't. Maybe I just want it to be coaching. And I don't say just as like less than. I mean, just coaching, staying in that lane, as opposed to wearing all the hats, doing all these other things that come along with that role, which is why I've said it a million times on this podcast. I'm not the CEO of Digital Business Evolution. I don't want to be the CEO. We have a CEO. No interest in being the CEO whatsoever, but it's really important to understand that. So I love the idea here of taking the money that you earn and investing it. And that's what we've been doing for the last couple of years. What do you say to the person who's listening right now, who is combative and saying, but Candy, I'm not making that much yet?
Yeah, well, you got to make more. Like, it's really simple. Like, if you're not making that much, just got to make more. So number one, you just got to make more. Like, So here's the thing. People attach a lot of emotion around money. Yeah. They somehow attach their worth to money. They attach perception. They compare to other people. But here's the deal. If you just drop all of that, because none of those feelings are serving you, they're all negative emotions. They're all based in fear, period. Yeah. So when we drop all of the motion that we tie around business, especially, I see that in entrepreneurs. I did not realize coming into this space how much people tie their own emotion around, like, business is facts, data, and numbers. That's it. Like, when you boil it down to what it really is, of course, there's heart and there's care and there's people, but the actual business growth comes from all the things that aren't as fluffy. Money's the same way. So money doesn't mean that you're less than, or that you can't do it because maybe you're in a financial position right now. It's because we only know what we know. And you might not have known any different than the path that you're on, or you might have had something that was completely out of your control happen to you, and it took away some of your work. I know I have more friends that were once wealthy and are not anymore than friends that are wealthy and continued, because money's easy to make. It's hard to sustain. And most people don't know that until they have the wisdom and the data of the life experience to understand that. So
why do you think that is?
I'm sorry?
Why do you think that is? Why is it hard to sustain?
I think because people use the same type of skills. They think that it's the same skills to build it as it is to sustain it. And it's not. It's two totally different principles. Like, how you're going to build your business and grow your business is not how you're going to scale it for sustainability. Yeah. So you have to learn, and most people don't dabble in the self-education once they get to a certain level because they get comfortable. So you always have to be increasing your knowledge. You always have to be, developing your business acumen. You always have to be able to get around other people so that you're not your own law of the lid, so that you know that there's another level of growth, which is going to require another level of you. Yeah. So if you're in this situation now, because I don't want anyone that feels that to feel lack. That is really important to me, because I know what that feels like. And that was something I had to go through early on in my journey. I just want you to know that if you're not making the money, when I say that you got to make more, it's because I believe that you can. Yeah. And I know that you can. It's just getting out of that lack mindset and understanding that money is replenishable, it's abundant, and it's here for you too. And so getting out of that is really the first step. And if you haven't haven't done the work to really decide what you think about money, then you're carrying all of those old beliefs into today. And that's really the first thing that we need to address, because otherwise we're going to be swimming uphill trying to fix all the other stuff as we do this.
Yeah. And that's one of the first things you have in the book. I mean, you dive right into the mindset of money right away in the first chapter, which is awesome because it is the foundation. Would you say to someone that has some money, they're not making tons of money, they're not in overflow and abundance, do you still think it's important to take small amounts and start investing them to get into the habit and build that muscle?
Yes. So, but it also depends on what your financial situation is.
Yeah.
So let's say you're not where you want to be financially. You have a little bit, you're not sure if you should start investing. What we need to find out first is if you have debt, because debt is the greatest destroyer of anybody's wealth. So if you have credit card debt, payday loans, boat loans, car loans, any type of interest that you're paying on something, you can't out invest bad debt on depreciating assets. And in the book, I talk about the rule of 7. So you can literally go down, take a look at everything you're paying every month. And this is generally speaking, if you have any interest that you're paying over 7%, 9 times out of 10, it's on a depreciating asset. It's a credit card loan. It's something, your school loans are going to be less than that. Your home loan, if you bought prior to this year, is going to be less than that for the most part. So it's pretty much on bad debt. You can't invest small amounts of money in the S&P 500 or ETF basket stocks, which are going to get on average a 9.3% return. When I did the data research for the book, 40 years we looked at, 9.3% is the average return. Wow. You can't pay 15% interest on something and try to invest to get 9.3%. It's just, again, it's math. So we need to make sure that we get rid of all of that debt first. And we need to set up the Brinks truck of your life, because it's really easy, again, to make money, and it's easy to do well in good times. It's hard to sustain it, and it's hard to keep it in bad times. That's why I feel like a lot of my friends that didn't do some of the things that I talk about in the book and build the financial Brinks truck of their life lost a lot of money. Yeah. So first we got to get rid of debt. Then we got to make sure that you are recession proofing your finances, so that when the economy shifts or there's an economic downturn, that you're setting yourself up to invest down and make sure to get more. Because people hear these words, recession, economic downturn. I want you to flip that. And when you hear those words, rather than feeling fear or uncertainty, I want you to think about opportunity.
Opportunity, yeah.
Because that's what it does. It lets the little guy in. It allows people to, maybe be able to pick up a foreclosure that you couldn't have done in the last 18 months. It allows you to buy Tesla stock and Apple and all of these at a discount that it was so pushed up so high. So there is a cadence to how you build wealth, and we got to get rid of debt first. We got to recession proof your life, which is having at least a 6-month fallback fund is what I call it. So that if you have a business, you have employees, if you're in something cyclic, or you just have a job, how long is it going to take you to get back that income? God forbid something happens, right? Yeah. And nobody thinks anything is going to happen until it does.
Right. I mean, we saw that in 2020. It's like
saw that in 2020. I've
all
seen
these
that
businesses that had to shut down.
1999, I was in business when the towers were attacked. I was in business and investing real estate in 2008. The savings and loans crisis was just ending when I was coming into business. My dad was in a bad motorcycle accident when I was writing this book, and like our lives completely changed in the midst of, being in Mexico, and he had to get all of these surgery, and, just so many things that you never think is going to happen. And that's why the Brinks truck is really important. And then from there, once you have all of that handled, then you can do the fun stuff. Then you can look at the basket stocks. Then you can look and, start to develop your investment strategy. But just like building a business, investing is developing a skill, and it's really hard to be good at everything. Yeah. You can be good at a few things. So investing may not be something that you want to go be picking stocks with, but you can start investing in a Roth IRA if you make under 133,000. If you are doing a SEP IRA, if you have employees, or, you can start with your retirement, reducing your tax savings, and then starting to look in building portfolio income in the stock. So there's definitely a cadence to it, and depends on where everybody is.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're listening and just the words that Candy's even throwing around, I'm just super grateful for being in business and having Mike in my corner, because I've learned this stuff. And my dad was always super supportive and made me sit down and learn all the money things with him at a really young age. But a lot of people don't have that. So if you're listening and you're overwhelmed by SEP IRA and Roth IRA and how much am I making and what should I have and do I count for this, that, or the other, just lean into the people that you do have. And that's why it's so important to have a CPA, to have an accountant. Even, we have clients all the time that are like, well, I'm not making money yet. I'm like, that's the perfect opportunity for you to start this conversation so that you start with a clean foundation. Have the business bank account set up before you start making money. Don't wait until it's, messy after, and start moving the money and asking the questions and learning about what is a SEP and what's a Roth and what's best for me. So don't let anything Candy is saying overwhelm you. Let it empower you I'm assuming 20 years ago, you didn't know all this stuff. You've learned it along the way.
No. And how did I do it? From books.
Yeah.
And so basically what I did is everything I just blabbled about is all in clearly defined, simple terms inside of Wealth Habits. Because if I didn't have a lot of the books that I had back when I was 19, 18, 20, 21 about business and personal finance, I wouldn't know all of this stuff because I didn't have those conversations. Life was more about survival than it was intention growing up. So we didn't have those conversations. And I know a lot of people haven't. So that's why it's all there for, anyone to be able to really understand and know. So, and the interesting thing was way back when I was reading those books, there wasn't a single female on the cover. They were all written by men.
Crazy.
And so when this book kind of came about, I remember thinking like, I don't want my picture on the cover. I want it to be black. Like I had all these things. I told my publisher, lo and behold, it's, my face is splattered on it, and I'll remember that the vice president of the company she said, Candy, when you were younger, you read all those books that had male pictures on it. I bet they didn't care that their face was on it. Maybe it's time we put a female's face on a financial book. And I was like, okay, done.
Done. It's so true. And something I love so much, I just picked it up. In your book, I'm like a sucker for charts and graphics. You have so many charts, so many graphics, and all of the work that you have in here is tangible work. So there are bar graphs and all of that, but there's also areas that you can sort of journal out and answer questions. And so it's sort of a comprehensive book/workbook. And so you can really jot down where you are, which I also think is cool because then you can circle back in the future and see how far you've come, which I love so much. Yeah. You mentioned recession proofing. I don't feel like recession is a daunting term, and maybe that's a privilege that I say that, but I look at it as opportunity like you do. And so we sort of work with how do we out earn the problem? How do we set ourselves up so that when something happens, because you guys, it's not a matter of if it happens, it's going to happen. It's history. We see this. This is the way that the economy works. When something happens, we're better set up. So when Mike and I think back to the crash, right after we were in college, we were just graduating college. Maybe we were 3 years out. And so we weren't really set up at the time to start investing chunks of money. We were probably house poor working at our first few jobs. Then, a couple of years later, now we just had pandemic and we were beautifully set up and we're so grateful for that opportunity. Now, in hindsight, we wish we could have done more. We wish we put more money into the stocks that we did, but it's like, okay, we did what we had. We did the best with what we had at the time with the knowledge that we had. For someone who doesn't fully understand recession, can we just talk through sort of the definition of recession? Because people still freak out and it happens all the time. So it's fine. And then I know you really teach 6 different ways to sort of recession proof your life, which you've started to talk about. If we could just break some of those ways down, because we've been in one. So newsflash, we've been in one.
So don't let me forget that question because I have to hit on something that you said.
Yes.
You said in 2008, you were working probably 3 jobs and you were house poor.
Yeah.
And if you would have heard me talk in 2008, sharing the things that I share now, you would have been set up even better for the 2020 pandemic.
I know.
So what I want everyone listening to it now is exactly what you experienced in 2008, but you didn't have the information. Everyone listening to this now will, because instead of being house poor, and instead of buying the biggest house that you could possibly afford, according to some bank, some person that sits in there and says what your debt to income ratio is and what you can actually afford, I want to encourage you, if you don't have a house, if you haven't bought a home or you're currently renting, rather than going out and buying the biggest house that you can afford, buy a duplex, a triplex, a small quad apartment building, live in one of the units, have your living expenses completely paid for so that when you start to earn more money, or at least live in there for a year or 2, you can move out, replace yourself with another renter. And now you have your first cash flowing asset.
I know. Like the amount of times we said, we wish we did that when we were younger, because that's what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Which is great. Better late than never.
And if you're listening and you haven't bought a house yet, and you're like, okay, I don't even know what that means. your best friend needs to be a really great loan officer that's honest with you, a mortgage originator that can talk about these things, because you can even qualify for FHA loans, which are a beautiful thing. Now, everybody's different, so you have to make sure you get the right lender, but you can maybe live in one of these units, have even a lower down payment, and be able to then cash flow that property quickly. You have to live in it for a year in order to meet the requirements, and there's a lot of rules. We don't need to get into the weeds. The principle is, if you continually try to spend everything that you make and you maximize your car payment for what they say you can afford, and you maximize your house payment, you will be working forever. So it's this whole different way of thinking, is how can I say no to a few things now so that I can say yes to anything later? I said no to, like, when we started the podcast, you were saying all of those things you were doing that as a 20-something-year-old looked so fun to me, but I didn't do any of them. I was trying to figure out how to, do a 941 and how to balance, QuickBooks and like all of this crap, figuring this out when my friends were having fun. But once I, turned 40 and I was able to completely make work optional, I got to say yes to a lot of things that most people don't. So the question is what are you willing to say no to now so that you can say yes to anything later? And I want to make sure to touch on your question.
Yeah, we'll come back to the recession proofing. That's my favorite thing, though, is how much you talk about starting with the end in mind, whether that's an exit strategy or where are you going, where do you want to end up, what do you want your life to look like, and delayed gratification.
Yeah.
Like, those are my, honestly, parts of like my core value system. Is everyone's looking for this like quick, I have to live in it now, fast cash, or just immediate gratification right now of the big house, of the fancy purse, of the vacation now. And I think that there's a fine line between, I saw a makeup bag recently that said something like living between YOLO and also like wanting to save.
Yeah.
And it's like,
sure.
yes, there's a gray area of like, yes, I'm alive, I'm healthy, we're young, we can travel, so do it now. But also, are you actually setting yourself up like you did in your early 20s to essentially, retire at 40, which is insane. It's so cool to see. So I just love how much you talk about this long game all the time.
Yeah. And it's because I could not believe when I exited my last company and kind of came online, if you want to, I mean, I was online, but I wasn't building a brand. So when I kind of came out from behind the scenes of building a company to trying to just figure out what I wanted to do, because when you do love working and being an entrepreneur, you get bored really quick. Like, I exited my company, I took 3 months and I was like, well, now what? Like, like the house is perfect. Like, I flipped a button, like, I don't even know what else to do. So, but I could not believe how much people were doing the flashy, shiny object. And here's what I would just encourage people to think about. When you go to buy the thing, when you go to buy the Louis bag, when you go to whatever it may be, if social media went away tomorrow, and you were in your home and you didn't go out into communities or you didn't go out into events and you didn't have social media, would that Louis bag feel as prestigious to you? Like, would it feel like something that you truly wanted if now no longer you can show it? And I think if people were truly self-aware and honest with themselves and be okay with the answer, because it's okay, we've all been there, I think you would realize a lot about yourself, that it's not necessarily the bag.
Yep.
It's the feeling that you want from the bag so that other people perceive you as being successful.
Yeah.
And when you actually have success, you're not really looking to show people that you're successful. I mean, I have the fancy shoes, but I actually don't have anywhere near as what many people would think. Like, I have a few purses. They don't bring me joy. I could have at any point went out and stroked a check for one of my favorite cars, but I know that dopamine hit and that happiness that people are seeking, it's short-lived, guys. It's so short-lived. And when you don't realize, because you don't have the data, you keep trying to find something and fill the gap. But when we did all the research for the book, it's why some of the richest people are so unhappy, because they're trying to get money as some way to find certainty or significance. And they're really missing the true growth and contribution that building a rich life provides. And so for me, it's about not just playing the long game, but it's sharing with people the realness, because I have the data, the 25 years of knowing a lot of this and having the mistakes that I just wish I could have people learn a lot more quickly, because you would build not just a happy life, but a life that you're truly fulfilled from. And I think that's what everybody's really after.
Oh my gosh, for sure. I just love this conversation so much too, because, with the industry, if you will, coaching, digital marketing, we see a lot of, whether it's the fancy bags or the G Wagons that people are promising you could write off, which you can't always. So please do your research, right? It's not like
Yeah.
a
Or you try to trade it in 2 years, and then you have to pay all this recapture tax because nobody
yeah.
told you that. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So the fancy bags, or just even like the revenue screenshots, right? Everyone's celebrating the revenue. And it's like, but what's your overhead? What does your profit margin look like? And also, what have you done for your clients? It doesn't necessarily matter. It can be really shiny out there. It can be really distracting out there. And so I love how you said, the successful people in your life and the most wealthy people that they're not out there flashing that stuff around. They just are. When I think of, you just are wealthy. You do have a lot of properties. You have sold businesses. It's just a fact. It's like the sky is blue, so it just is. That's just what Candy does. And so I just love that about you. Yeah.
It's interesting. I did an interview with Ed Milet, and he and I were talking about how he and I never have bought a new car. Like, all these people go out and they buy the new car and it was just funny because we learned it. I'm like, he's like, no, he's like, I bought my wife a new car one time. It was the only new car I bought. And we just had this whole conversation about, why would you ever buy a new car? And meanwhile, there's people with a fraction of the net worth that, especially he has.
Yeah.
And it's like, they're buying these brand new cars that depreciate 20 grand once you drive them off the lot because you think that you want the tax deduction. But most people don't understand that tax deduction is only saving you a percentage of the actual money that you're spending.
Right.
And would that tax deduction be better suited as investing into your business so that you can grow your revenue, have more net profit, NOI to be able to invest in? So I think it's just, again, and it's interesting because when I first came on front stage, is the only thing I can call it, is I really tried to not talk about these things because they weren't being talked about. And I was like, well, I don't really want to be the person that's ruffling the feathers. And then it was interesting. Once I started sharing a lot of that, people were like, whoa, this is different, but this makes sense, but this isn't what I'm hearing. And so I just wish that people had the information sooner so that they could build wealth more quickly and be able to really have what everyone wants, which is freedom.
Absolutely.
People say they want money, but really what they're after is freedom. They're after life, to be able to have choice and to be able to contribute. Because I could, starting a nonprofit at 26, that's given me some of the greatest joy of my life. I don't remember, hitting certain benchmarks. People ask me all the time about what was your highest revenue year? I genuinely don't even remember because, and I can't look at my tax returns because of all the things that I've done over the years to reduce them. But it's I really don't know, but I know that I did a rescue, the largest in Pennsylvania, to rescue 67 animals that were going to be euthanized. And I pulled it all off in 5 days, and they said it couldn't be done. Those things stick in my mind.
Yeah.
And they had nothing to do with anything about me. It actually cost me time and money. So I just want to encourage anyone that if your whole goal is to just accumulate a bunch of money because you want to buy things, don't buy my book, because you're missing the whole point of what it really means to build a rich life.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. And I heard you tell the story so many times too, when you were sitting in the intersection and you saw the building in Pennsylvania and you were you heard kind of intuitively this calling to, that's your building for your sanctuary. And you were like, what sanctuary, and you're like,
what? I was like, I'm building an empire. I have I had offers on multiple locations. I was buying all these other buildings. I had bought this, I wanted to buy the whole street that a couple of my other businesses were on. And I just bought that building because it was going to secure the corner. And I was like, build a nonprofit. What on earth? That's not part of the plan. But yet, sometimes we think we know what we need and we actually miss what we need. Yeah. So I just think it's important to, when you're going in your life after everything that you want, be careful that you don't miss exactly what you need.
That's so good. All right. I guess we should go back. I don't want to leave everybody hanging. So just a couple recession proofing things.
I'm so glad you remembered because I did not. Okay. So recession proof. So recession just means anytime there is 2 quarters consecutively, so 3 months of the year, 2 times, consecutively that there is any type of downturn in the GDP or any of these other benchmarks that they measure the economy on, that they deem it a recession. So when we look at what happened from COVID, right, our government pushed $3 trillion into the economy to try to rescue us from this pending pandemic recession that they were thinking that we were going into. So anytime you have that, you're going to have an influx of money into the economy, which then is going to get everybody out spending. And then when they stop printing money and pushing that money out, well, now people don't have as much to spend, sales start to drop. We had the Great Resignation. We had all of these things happening. And if anything, anytime we have those great summers in the economy, we're going to have some winters. Right. It's just the data of 40 years when you look at it. So that's all we came into, is just we had all of this surplus. And now all of a sudden we have all of these people kind of holding on to their money because they're unsure of what's going to happen. And we have inflation rising because why? Great Resignation, we're paying people more, costs of goods go up, costs of services go up. People think they're making more money, but actually everything just costs more. Yep. So that's all a recession is. So once you know what the definition is, it doesn't have to be so scary.
Yeah.
And then the important thing to know is anytime we enter into one of those cycles, what you did prior is what's going to set you up to do better through it. But if you're that person, it's like, well, I didn't know and I didn't set this up and I'm just learning this now. We've all been there too. So what you want to do moving forward is, if you are investing, you want to look at more safe, boring, right? When great times are going up, you can be a little more risk adverse. You can do a little bit more with your investing. But when times come that are a little uncertain, you just want to kind of have everything in more of a safe basket. So you'd want to be looking at stocks like treasuries, mortgage-backed securities. You'd want to be looking at investments like that, something that is more stable, your retirements, your 401ks. It's really hard, unless you're going to study, because investing is a skill. It's hard to pick stocks that you think are going to do well. Like, of course, I did really well through COVID, but I had the data. You did really well. Like, we were able to do things because we understood what was going on. But if you don't want to just go blanketly picking things. Yeah. So that's one thing to consider. It's also really great because anytime you go into this type of economy, recession-proof businesses are a really great thing to look at too. So if you're looking at investing, I go on bizbuysell.com every single day. Every single day of my life. I don't know the last time I've missed, maybe Christmas, but I go on there every day and I look at businesses for sale. And I'm always looking for simplistic business model, little innovation, and something that's been around forever. Because when you take money out of the economy, and I don't want anyone to go to sleep on me here, because I just want you to hear this so that you learn this. And at some point, even if it doesn't apply to you now, I promise you in 10 years from now, when we do this again, you'll be thinking back to this episode with Jess. When we go into times when people aren't spending and they aren't buying new things, what are they doing? They're repairing the old things that they have. So businesses like home repair services, car repair services, anybody that's doing something that is a service-based company that is repairing things like laundromats, because now more people are renting as opposed to having in-home units. Those are all great recession-proof businesses. HVAC, electrical, any trade, things like that. So those are all ways to kind of look at businesses. But for the average person, if you're not looking to invest or buy a business or start some ancillary revenue in a different business, you want to make sure that you're saving that fallback fund so that if something happens in this next turn of events, that you are not draining or bleeding money because you don't have something to fall back on. That's really what it's all about. It's making sure that, one, there's opportunity everywhere. Two, that you're going into safer type of investment, securities, mortgage-backed treasury, which those things are like never talked about in good times because they're super boring and you typically don't even outbeat inflation. But in an economic downturn, they're really great. Looking at recession-proof businesses, making sure that you have your fallback fund set and in place, and that you are decreasing and minimizing your spending. Because a lot of people don't realize that, you know, you sign up for something and the trial expires. And now you're paying $19 a month. Or your Google storage, business owners, I just said this to one of my, I'm like, hey, why are we paying $200 a month for Google? Like, they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, if you don't know and I don't know, then we need to find out. Like, so when is the last time you went on your own CFO meeting with yourself? You went on your own financial date, whether you have a business, this would be for your business. I call it the State of the Union meeting. It's in the book, where you take a look at all of your expenditures and you go line by line and make sure that that's even something that you know is you're being charged for, or that you want to be charged for? Or is there a different plan that you can actually go down? You know, every year setting up an appointment with your insurance agent, can you actually reduce your insurance premiums, shopping them out? There's so many ways. It's boring stuff.
Yeah.
This is the boring stuff that makes you rich. Like I always say, there's nothing like sexy. I didn't have a magic bullet. I didn't create some fancy thing. It was all the boring stuff over time. That's what really builds wealth.
Yeah, it really does. And, you know, we can't manage what we can't measure.
Right.
So it's those CFO dates could be really scary, especially for people who don't feel like they're in the best place financially. I've had friends and clients that are, you know, maybe scared to even look at their debt to income ratio. They don't want to know how bad it is, right? What's my credit card debt? Oh, it's so bad. But you can't manage it if you can't measure it. So the first step is really just being able to look at it without the shame and the guilt and the fear. And it's like detaching the emotion, like you said, this is where you're at. Let's take a look at it from like a logical mathematic left side of the brain. Like, this is just where we are. So where are we going to go from here?
Right. Yeah. And the thing is your brain's not helping you, right? Because when our brain goes to do something like that, money is a very touchy subject for a lot of people. When you have a lot of debt and then you know, oh gosh, I shouldn't have debt. So then you attach shame, guilt with that. Then what happens is every time you go to review those balance sheets or those P&Ls, you have anxiety. Mm-hmm. And then your brain says, no, let's protect you. We don't want to do it. So it pulls back. You don't review it. And now you just got yourself into this cycle and you ignore. But anytime we ignore something, that's just because it's rooted in fear. Yes. And it's not coming from a place of empowerment. So I just want to encourage anyone that feels that way. If you continue, we did all the research for this too, and this is all in the book. If you just push through and you set even 5 minutes, and if your anxiety is so bad, just get to the timer for 5 minutes. Grant yourself some grace, celebrate that you did that, and then go back and do 10, go back and do 15. I promise you that if you face the dragon, your anxiety will drop. And as you start to understand this more, you basically will get so much empowerment from it and so much knowledge that it will excite you. And that's what I hope. I hope somebody listening who feared their money at some point tags us on Instagram and is like, now I love to look at my numbers because I understand that this is how I need to move the needle in my business and in my personal finances.
It's so good. It's taking the power back. It's taking the power back. 100%. I love it.
They're just numbers.
I could literally talk to you all day. I have so many things I want to talk about, but I want to be mindful of your time. So before anyone pops off with our last few questions, where can we find the book? How can we support you? How can people follow you, learn from you? Tell me all the things.
So it's everywhere books are sold, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. I have it on the site, candyvalentino.com, and I'm Candy Valentino everywhere. Instagram, TikTok are my two biggest handles.
I love it. It's so good. And like I said, I read it. You all know how much I'm a reader. It's on the book list that I have. We have a book list that we give everybody. So love it, love it, love it. All right. Last few questions here. Are you open for some rapid fire?
Yes. I do want to share because this is part of what you said earlier. If you're waiting for the audiobook or you're an audiobook person, I just want to encourage you to still get the book. I'm not making anything. 100% of all proceeds go to charity. So this doesn't benefit me at all, but it'll benefit you because what it does is it gives you the ability to write in it. I get hundreds and hundreds of screenshots of people highlighting and writing in their books. So the audiobook is great. I did it in my own voice. It was a crazy project, but I really want to just encourage you, even if you need to listen to it, to get the book, because there's quizzes and things that I can't put in the audiobook. They wouldn't let me put in the audiobook because there's no way to say like, click yes or no, but so get the book. It'll help a lot.
Absolutely. And we'll link that in the show notes. We have it. I have 2 copies of the book. And so I love it. It's the best. What are you currently reading?
I am reading The Ketotarian and the Inflammation Spectrum by a friend, Dr. Will Cole. So just in transparency, because I think this is important for entrepreneurs to learn too. Sometimes when you go all in on one thing, there isn't enough for you to do all of the things well. This is why investing is a skill, building a business. You can't do all things well, but you can do a couple really well if you focus. I'm really disciplined to focus and go all in. That's exactly what I've done for the last year with the book and so many other things, 3 events, 3 retreats, 100 stop media tour. It's just been crazy, but I let my health go. So I feel like I have a lot of inflammation in my body. I really want to get back to feeling good in my skin. So that was the very first book I bought in 2023 and what I'm reading.
That's awesome. I'm proud of you. I'm really proud of you for doing that, because I think like attracts like, and while I might not have the businesses that you have, certainly the blinders on drive to a fault. I definitely have that and have experienced burnout multiple times, and my health is always the first thing to go.
But
That
don't
and
have time for
probably
that.
relationships. I'm like, sorry, mom, I love you. Text you later.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. What's your favorite movie?
I'd say it's probably Dirty Dancing.
Yes.
And that ages me. And I think just because Christmas is just over and it's a little bit of a depiction of my own life, is Four Christmases.
Oh, so cute. So cute. What'd you want to be when you were growing up?
I remember wanting to be an attorney, and I wanted to be in the FBI. And I actually wrote about that in the book. So I actually wanted to be in the FBI. I wanted to be a criminal profiler before there was a TV show or it was a thing. I read a book about this guy that, profiled criminals and all these serial killers and understand how they worked. And that's what I was my major, until I realized college wasn't for me.
That's awesome. We have a $50,000 question. So if I were to give you $50,000 tomorrow, you can invest it any way that you want, in the business, for the business, or anywhere else. You could break it apart. You could keep it as one chunk. How would you use it?
I would use it as one chunk. I would get the most amount of house that I could get for a multifamily unit. And I would probably, just because everyone's going to be like, where can you buy that? There are a lot of places outside of major cities that you can still get houses for $50,000, $75,000, $100,000. So I would get a multifamily unit rental as much as I could get with that amount.
Amazing. And then our last signature question, we named the company Digital Business Evolution because we believe we're always evolving and growing. And so with that, what is your next personal or business evolution?
Well, this book was a big one for me because I really didn't want to write a book. Everything about writing a book is very personal and it really puts you out there. And I've always had kind of people at a little bit of a distance. Even in business, you kind of like build a business. It's not you build a brand and there's distance. So this has been the biggest evolution for me. And to think that I have another one coming out this year, it blows my mind.
Oh my gosh.
So this was part of a multi-book deal. So we have another one coming out this year, and I can't imagine what this is going to bring, considering what 2022 has done and just how I've evolved. And I've really had, no matter where you are in life, people may see me in this place. There's always something else. And there's always, kind of another level, but there's also another devil. There's also something you're overcoming. And, business I could do, investing I could do all day long, but to put yourself out there and even getting on podcasts and talking about your personal story and, sharing some of the things about my childhood that I never talked about ever. It's a tough thing. It's a totally different energy. And so thankfully, I feel like for 98% of the time I'm met with such love and graciousness and people that are appreciative, but that was a very scary thing to put yourself out in such a big way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I acknowledge you for it. I remember listening to the Ed Milet podcast when he sort of cracked you open a little bit and you shared, and it was just an unfortunate but beautiful circumstance that so many people can relate to. And you even had a moment at the event where you had people stand up for different reasons, and it's so powerful to see that we're not alone. And so I love you for that. I really do.
Thank you.
And it makes you that much more relatable. Ladies and gents, Candy Valentino, thank you so much for being here. I just adore you so much. I'm so grateful for you to be a friend, to be a mentor, and just to be someone who really, truly has changed my life in ways that you might not recognize. So if you loved this episode, which I know that you did, and you took something from it, do me a favor, do Candy a favor. The best gift we can give back is to screenshot it, share it out on social, tag Candy at Candy Valentino and me at I am Jessica DeRose. Let us know what you took away. Let us know what you're working on, and let us know, most importantly, when you order the book. As always, my friends, cheers to your evolution. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you loved this episode, I invite you to be a part of our ripple effect and share it with a friend. And please, if you feel called, take 30 seconds to leave a 5-star review, and I'll be forever grateful. Until next time, cheers to your evolution.